It was 3:09 a.m. when I woke up with the weight of 100 unanswered prayers pressing on my chest, the kind of night where silence feels heavier than words, and even breathing feels like confession. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and whispered, "Lord, I don't even know where to start." The room was dark, lit only by the faint orange glow of the streetlight seeping through the curtain. I reached for my Bible not to read, but to hold, because sometimes holding the word is all the faith you have left. I bowed my head and tried to pray, tried to string together words that didn't sound tired, tried to explain the same things I'd already said 100 times before. But before I could even finish my first sentence, he interrupted me, not rudely, not suddenly, but completely. It was as if heaven itself leaned close and exhaled into the air. Everything in the room, the stillness, the shadows, the silence came alive, and then I heard it, "Stop praying like I'm far away." The words weren't loud, but they hit like thunder in my spirit. I froze. My hands trembled. I could feel every heartbeat in my throat, and for a long, unbearable second, I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming. Then the presence settled not around me, but within me. It felt like warmth spreading through my ribs, steady and certain, like light remembering its source. "Stop praying like I'm far away," he repeated, softer this time. "I'm closer than the words you're trying to find." I couldn't move. My first thought was that I was losing my mind, but then peace came slow, steady, undeniable, the kind that wraps around fear and smothers it. I whispered, "Lord, what do you mean?" And he answered, "You keep reaching for me like I'm somewhere you haven't arrived yet. But I've been sitting inside every sigh you've ever breathed." The words pierced deeper than any sermon ever could. I had spent my whole life praying like heaven was distant, begging, pleading, explaining, but in that moment, I realized I was speaking to someone already inside the silence. The air began to change again. It shimmered faintly like heat over water, and through that haze I saw something, not clearly, but enough to know it wasn't imagination, a form of light shaped like presence itself. He stepped closer. No face, no blinding radiance, just an outline of compassion made visible. And as he moved, the silence around me deepened until even my heartbeat sounded like worship. "You talk to me," he said, "as if I'm late. But I am not bound by time. I am the moment you stop pretending you're alone." Tears slipped down my face. I hadn't even realized I was crying. All my questions, all my doubts, all my years of praying for proof, they suddenly felt small in the presence of that sentence. He didn't need to say more. That one truth unraveled everything I thought I knew about prayer. "Lord," I whispered, "I thought prayer was how I reached you." And he answered, "No, prayer is how you remember that I already reached you." The air shimmered again, softer now, and I could feel something happening not around me, but inside me. A strange, holy quiet. Every anxious thought fell silent. Every unfinished sentence stopped mattering. I felt him so near it was like breathing light. And then, like the calm after a storm, he spoke again, gentle, but with the authority of eternity. "You don't need the right words. You just need to be real." The words echoed like they came from the walls themselves. I tried to speak, but my throat caught. My voice came out a whisper. "I don't know how to be real anymore." He stepped closer. The warmth around me thickened, every shadow pushed back by a glow that wasn't from this world. "Then start by being honest with me," he said, not holy, not strong, just honest. I covered my face with my hands, trembling, and said what I had been afraid to say for months. "I'm tired, Lord. I'm scared you've stopped listening." There was silence, pure, deep silence. And then a whisper softer than thought, stronger than thunder. "If I stopped listening, you wouldn't still be breathing." The moment he said it, my knees gave out. I fell onto the floor, weeping like something inside me had just broken open. Not from sorrow, from relief, because I finally understood he wasn't far. He never had been. Every unanswered prayer I thought had disappeared into nothing. Every night I begged for him to hear me. He was never silent. He was simply answering in ways my ears weren't trained to hear. Then he said one more thing before the light began to fade. "Tell them to stop praying like they are auditioning for my attention. I'm already listening." The air softened. The light dimmed, but the words didn't leave. They're still there pulsing inside me like a heartbeat that belongs to heaven. And that's when I realized he hadn't just interrupted my prayer, he had rewritten it. The next morning, I woke up still trembling. The room looked the same curtains, same Bible on the table, but the air didn't feel ordinary anymore. It felt like something invisible had settled there, like the silence itself had memory. I couldn't stop replaying his words in my mind, stop praying like I'm far away. It haunted me in a good way, like a melody that refuses to leave. All day, I kept thinking, what if that one sentence wasn't just for me? What if it was for everyone who's ever felt like their prayers vanish into the ceiling? That night, I tried again. I turned off the lights, sat on the edge of my bed, and whispered the only words I could find, Lord, if you're still here, I'm listening. And before I could say another word, he interrupted again, not with thunder, not with power, but with calm that cut through every noise inside me. You're still trying too hard. I froze, trying too hard. I whispered. Yes, he said. You keep talking to me like I'm a stranger you need to impress. Those words hit like truth does when it burns and heals at the same time. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. And he continued, prayer isn't performance, it's presence. You're not standing on a stage, you're sitting with me. The air thickened again. My body began to tremble not from fear, but recognition. I could feel his nearness, the way you feel sunlight on your skin before you open your eyes. And he said, when you pray, stop trying to move my hand, let me move your heart. I bowed my head, but Lord, I said quietly, I feel like I've been praying wrong my whole life. And he whispered, you can't pray wrong when you're honest. The weight of that sentence crushed me and lifted me all at once. Every time I had prayed carefully with the right words, the right posture, the right tone suddenly felt so empty compared to this raw stillness. He wasn't asking for beauty. He was asking for truth. Then he said, the world prays to be heard. My children pray to be held. My chest tightened. He was showing me something deeper than I'd ever seen before. I could see it like a vision forming millions of people, eyes closed, whispering words they didn't believe, hoping God might notice. And he said, they think I'm far because they've confused silence with absence. His tone grew heavier, like heaven itself was grieving. The noise of their fear drowns out my whisper. They pray louder, thinking volume will bring me closer, but I am not reached by noise, I am revealed through surrender. I felt tears burning my eyes again. I whispered, Lord, how do I surrender? And he answered, by letting go of the idea that you can lose me. That sentence hit deeper than any sermon I've ever heard. I couldn't breathe. My hands covered my face as sobs broke out from somewhere far inside me. Then he said gently, you are not trying to reach me, you are trying to remember me, I was never gone. And suddenly, I saw flashes moments I'd called hopeless, prayers I thought unanswered. I saw him in every one of them, not rescuing me from afar, but standing quietly beside me, waiting for me to notice. He continued, I interrupt your prayers because you keep asking me to come closer when I already live inside you. I lifted my head. The room shimmered again, faintly glowing like breath made visible. Lord, I whispered, then why does it still feel like you're so far away sometimes? The silence stretched. Then came his reply, soft, almost sorrowful. Because you're still listening for me in sound, I speak through stillness. And then, he showed me, I saw a ripple of light spread outward like a heartbeat made visible from my chest into the air. And then another, and another. Every time I exhaled, light moved through the room, invisible to the eyes but undeniable to the spirit. This, he said, is prayer, not words rising up, but light being released. When you breathe with faith, heaven breathes back. The whole room felt alive. It was as though the air was listening. I whispered through my tears, so prayer isn't about asking. And he said, prayer isn't what you do when you need me, it's what happens when you remember I'm already here. The sentence echoed, bending through the walls, through my ribs, through everything I thought I knew. You don't start prayer, he added, you enter it. He paused again, letting that truth settle in me like warmth after winter. You've made prayer an event, but it's a conversation that never stopped. My entire body shook under the weight of it. I felt so small, and yet so seen. And then, before the moment could pass, he said one last thing, that night words that felt like lightning cloaked in love. Tell them I interrupt prayers not to silence them, but to remind them who started the conversation. The light dimmed. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty, it was full of him. I sat there for hours, unable to move, knowing something inside me had changed forever. And as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I whispered to no one and to him at once, "You interrupted me, Lord, but you finished what I couldn't say." The next night, I didn't plan to pray. I just sat there still, waiting, not for an answer this time, but for the presence. And somehow, even before I could take a breath, he was already there. The air shifted again, that unmistakable calm that feels both like awe and home at once. No movement, no light show, just the sense that eternity had entered the room quietly, wearing no crown, demanding no attention. Then I heard him say, "You've learned to listen. Now listen for others." My heart skipped. "What do you mean, Lord?" he replied, "the same way I interrupted your prayer. I'm interrupting the prayers of an entire generation. They think I'm silent because they're waiting for sound, but I'm speaking through stillness." A vision opened before me. I saw people in bedrooms, churches, cars, hospitals, each with heads bowed, whispering words that never seemed to rise. Their lips moved, but I could feel what they felt: exhaustion, confusion, the ache of wondering whether heaven still listens. And then I saw it, a golden thread connecting them all, invisible to their eyes but radiant to mine. Every person was connected by the same frequency, heaven's heartbeat. "This is how I hear them," he said. "Not by volume, not by eloquence, but by heart. When they stop talking long enough to weep, I answer before the tears even fall." The vision zoomed closer. I saw a man praying through clenched teeth, a woman whispering her child's name, a teenager staring at the ceiling, whispering, "God, are you real?" And Jesus said, "These are my favorite prayers, the ones that don't know their prayers yet." I felt something break in me. We have been trained to perform even in front of the one who already knows our hearts. He was showing me his interruptions weren't rejection, they were rescue. They ask me for words. He said, "But what they need is awareness. I don't need them to talk longer, I need them to remember who's listening." He stepped closer and I saw his face, not blinding, not perfect in symmetry, but alive. The kind of face that looks like love learned pain and chose to stay anyway. "Jonathan," he said softly, "the prayers that will shake the earth will not be shouted from pulpits. They will be whispered in bedrooms. They will sound like surrender." I swallowed hard. "Surrender," he nodded. "They have prayed for change but resisted transformation. They want me to fix what I'm trying to heal." The light pulsed around him, rhythmic, like the sound of creation breathing. And through that glow, I saw thousands, no, millions of people. Some kneeling, some standing, some weeping, some silent. Each one frozen in that same divine interruption, that moment where heaven answers before the human heart can explain what it wants. He continued, "They don't understand every time they come to me with words. I meet them with awareness. That's why they stop speaking and start crying. It's not confusion, it's communion." Then his tone shifted, not harsh but firm, like a father trying to wake his children before a storm. "The days ahead will grow loud, the world will shake and fear will shout. But my people, those who have learned the language of stillness, will not be moved." I could see it, chaos rising, nations trembling, voices clashing like thunder. And in the middle of that noise, tiny circles of calm people sitting quietly, eyes closed, listening to the silence. Peace surrounded them like fire that didn't burn. These, he said, are my listeners. They will carry peace where others carry panic. They will not fight the noise, they will outlast it. Then I heard the sound again, that faint hum, the same one that had followed every encounter. I realized it wasn't just background, it was the presence, the sound of heaven's patience. He spoke over it. "Tell them I'm interrupting not to silence their prayers, but to rewrite them. They pray for comfort, I am giving them capacity. They ask for answers, I am teaching them awareness." Tears filled my eyes. "Lord," I said, "how can I make them understand?" He stepped closer until his voice was not around me but within me. "You don't convince the world of my voice. You carry it. You live as interruption, peace in motion." I could hardly breathe. He was giving me a glimpse of what was coming, not revival as we expect, but recognition. He continued, "Soon they will feel me before they hear me. The wind, the stillness, the pull in their chests, that's me. I am whispering to hearts faster than tongues can speak. The vision grew brighter. I saw faces glowing faintly, not with light, but with awareness, people stopping mid-sentence, tears streaming because they felt him interrupting their thoughts with peace. This is what the next move looks like, he said. Not more talking, more listening, not new revelation, renewed recognition. I whispered, why interrupt though, Lord? Why not just wait until we finish praying? He smiled the kind of smile that holds eternity in its corners. Because love doesn't wait for you to finish before responding. And just like that, it all made sense. He interrupts not because he's impatient, but because he's intimate. He doesn't need our speeches, he needs our stillness. He doesn't wait for the perfect prayer. He meets the broken whisper before it's even formed. Then he said, when I interrupt, don't think I'm cutting you off. I'm cutting you open so peace can get in. The light around him dimmed, melting into the quiet hum again. He stepped back, and I could feel the atmosphere shifting back toward silence. But before he left, he said one last thing, a prophecy I'll never forget. Soon I will interrupt the prayers of nations. Their noise will break, and I will speak one sentence, and it will be enough to change everything. The hum faded. The room stilled, and I sat there trembling, knowing I had just glimpsed the next great awakening, not born in noise, but in divine interruption. And as dawn crept through the curtains, I whispered through the last of my tears, Lord, if you interrupt again, don't let me talk over you. For days after that encounter, I couldn't function the same. Every noise felt sharper, every silence felt alive. Even the ticking of the clock sounded different, like each second carried a message. I stopped trying to pray with words. Instead, I would just sit still, heart open, waiting for the presence that always seemed to arrive first. And then, one night, he did. It was 3:23 a.m. The air shifted again, that familiar hum, that pulse that feels like heaven breathing, but this time it was stronger. It wasn't just around me, it was everywhere. My whole room flickered like candlelight underwater, and then he spoke. You've heard me interrupt your prayer, he said, but now you will hear the sentence I will speak over the world. My heart dropped. The world. I whispered. He said, yes, because what I'm about to say will divide noise from truth, and stillness from fear. My voice will not shout this time, it will be a whisper that shakes nations. The room trembled faintly, not from earthquake, but from presence. The walls seemed to breathe. My body felt weightless, like gravity was paying respect to something greater. Then he said, watch. Before my eyes, vision unfolded wide, endless, alive. I saw cities across the world all at once. Night and day blended like a single moment. People running, arguing, striving, each heart full of questions. Where is God? Why isn't he answering? And in the middle of that storm of confusion, heaven exhaled. It wasn't sound, it was stillness. Everything stopped. Cars froze mid-motion. Wind halted. Even fire paused mid-flicker. And in that absolute quiet his voice came. One sentence, calm, clear, eternal. Be still. And recognize me. The words rolled through creation like the sound of a heartbeat amplified through mountains. It wasn't just spoken, it was felt. Every creature, every soul, every atom responded. People fell to their knees not out of terror, but out of awareness. It was as if the earth itself remembered who it belonged to. Be still and recognize me. He didn't say no, he said recognize, because he was never gone. He had simply been waiting for the noise to quiet down enough for us to notice. I watched as churches, homes, and streets filled with that same trembling silence I'd known in my own room. Eyes opened, hands dropped from clenched fists. People began to weep not out of guilt, but out of relief. They will not see me appear in the sky first, he said. They will feel me awaken inside them. The vision expanded again. I saw political leaders mid-speech fall. Silent as conviction washed through the air. I saw nations at war suddenly pause as their soldiers looked up, sensing something holy in the stillness. I saw children laughing because even they felt the peace ripple through their small hearts. The whole planet seemed to stop breathing for one long, sacred moment, and then I heard the same hum again, the heartbeat of heaven. Only this time it wasn't faint, it was everywhere. Every mountain, every city, every home. Do you hear it? He asked. Yes. I whispered, trembling. It's the same sound, he nodded. It's the sound of recognition. Creation remembering its creator. The vision shifted again. I saw waves of light moving through the air, through walls, through hearts, through everything man thought he could control. It wasn't destruction, it was awakening. This is what I've been preparing them for, he said. They keep asking me to return, not realizing I've been speaking in their pauses all along. I am already walking the earth not in body, but in awakening. He stepped closer. The glow around him was almost unbearable. Tell them, he said, that before the trumpet there will be a whisper. And those who know my silence will recognize my sound. I could barely hold myself upright. My body felt hollow, filled only with light. Every word he spoke seemed to echo infinitely, reverberating through unseen realms. Be still and recognize me. It wasn't a command, it was an invitation. A call back to relationship, a reminder that the distance between heaven and earth was never space, it was distraction. Then I saw at the aftermath, people leaving their homes differently, families holding each other without words, old enemies sitting together, not speaking, just listening to quiet. Even nature seemed to hum, wind softer, oceans calmer, the sky brighter. This, he said, is how peace looks before I return. I swallowed hard. Lord, I whispered, will everyone hear it? He looked at me with eyes that held galaxies and grief and glory all at once. Everyone will feel it, he said, but only those who have learned to be still will recognize it. And then the vision faded, the light dimmed, the hum softened back into my own heartbeat. I opened my eyes. I was back in my room. The candle beside me had burned down completely. The clock read 3:59 a.m. The sentence he had spoken still echoed in the air, be still, and recognize me. I knew then that this was what he had meant all along. Prayer wasn't just words, it was participation. We weren't waiting for him to speak. He had been speaking through every pause, every silence, every breath, and the world, whether it knows it or not, is one divine interruption away from awakening. That's why he stopped me mid-prayer, not to quiet me, but to teach me that sometimes heaven's loudest answers begin with stillness. The night after the vision, I didn't try to pray. I just sat there quiet, still, half afraid to breathe in case I missed his voice again. Everything around me felt charged, as though the very air had been rewritten. It wasn't silence anymore. It was expectation. Hours passed, nothing moved, and then, sometime around 3:33 a.m., the atmosphere shifted again. That familiar hum, the sound between heartbeats, began to fill the room. He was here, but this time his presence didn't carry the weight of warning. It carried the softness of completion. Jonathan, he said gently, you've heard the sentence. Now I'll show you what comes after. The light returned gold at first, then white, then something I can't name. It wasn't a glow anymore, it was a revelation, and through that radiance I saw the world awake, not awake in noise, but in recognition. People everywhere had stopped not because of fear, but because they felt something. The whisper he'd spoken, be still and recognize me, had spread like wind through the soul of the earth, and the world listened. Families who hadn't prayed in years were sitting together in silence. Churches were full again, not of performance, but presence. Even nature seemed to bow. Storms paused midair, oceans rippled in harmony, the very sky looked alive. This, he said, is what happens when awareness replaces anxiety. I watched as light filled streets, homes, and hearts. People looked at each other differently, not as strangers, but as souls. You could feel it. Peace didn't just return, it took over. For years, he said, they called it silence, but silence was my language all along. They just forgot how to listen. He turned toward me. His expression carried both joy and grief. The world has chased noise so long that peace will now feel foreign. But my listeners, the ones who learn stillness, they will guide the rest. I saw the men and women in every nation, moving quietly through chaos like walking beacons. They weren't preaching, they were carrying. Everywhere they went, stillness followed, that unmistakable awareness of presence. He continued, these are my carriers of calm. They will not build towers, they will build tables. They will remind people that heaven was never far, only filtered by fear. Then his tone shifted, low and deliberate, like thunder about to become rain. Tell them that the ones who recognize me in stillness will recognize me when the sky opens. They won't run to me, they'll rise with me. The words pierced through me like light through glass. It was revelation, pure and unfiltered. This was what he was preparing us for. I whispered, Lord, is this the end? And he smiled the kind of smile that carries eternity and tenderness together. It's the beginning of the end and the end of forgetting. He stepped closer, eyes shining like dawn breaking through tears. The enemy taught them that silence means absence. But I am teaching them that silence is intimacy. The light around him pulsed again, matching the rhythm of my heart. Tell them, he said, that I am answering prayers they haven't prayed yet. I am already walking into the days they fear. The vision expanded once more. I saw the future not destruction, but decision. Two kinds of people, those who ran from the stillness and those who knelt inside it. And the ones who stayed still were glowing not with fire, but with awareness. He spoke again. I am not coming to take peace away. I am coming to finish what peace began. I wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already showing me. The world trembled not from violence, but from awakening. The sound, that low hum, spread like a wave of heartbeat after heartbeat. Every living thing vibrated with the same frequency. Recognition, it was happening. Creation was finally remembering its creator. And then, for one last time, he said the sentence that had changed everything, "Be still." And recognize me, but now I heard the second part of the whisper, the part hidden beneath the first. For I have been here all along. The realization hit me like wind through open doors. He was never returning from afar. He was revealing himself from within. The light around him grew so bright it became everything. I couldn't see where he ended and where I began. Every fear, every doubt, every unanswered prayer dissolved into that radiance. And then he spoke his final words. Tell them, I interrupt not to stop their prayers, but to start their awakening. When they learn to recognize me, they will realize I was never the silence, I was the voice speaking through it. The light faded, the hum softened, the room returned dim, ordinary, quiet. Only now, even the quiet felt holy. The clock read 3:59 a.m. Outside, the world was still asleep, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long, because one whisper had already left heaven, and it was still echoing through every heart willing to hear it. Be still and recognize me.